Let's talk about the Time article that came out this time last year that goes into the dark history of American psychiatry silencing women. We all know about the witch trials and how they happened between 1600 and 1800, but what you might not know is that the witch trials never really ended. It was just that instead of calling independent women witches, we started to call them crazy. In the 1800s, women were expected to be quiet and submissive to their husbands. And when they weren't and they had levels of independence and tried to exert those, they were told that they were crazy or given a diagnosis by psychiatrists. When women were being independent, they could be called morally insane and sentenced to live in an asylum. In fact, by the request of a husband was a perfectly acceptable reason for someone to be locked up in an asylum at that time. They could also be suffering from fake illnesses such as uterine derangement, which essentially meant that you were going through your menstrual cycle and your hormones were going wild. Psychiatric hospitals at the time were becoming so overrun that they started using things like chloroform to quiet the more boisterous patients, who, for the record, should not have been there in the first place. Many of the treatments used were completely unjust, including things like removal of the sex organs and also using leeches on the genitals. The only way to escape this was to completely submit and pretend like they believed that everything the psychiatrist was saying was true, and to pretend that they were going to go back to their old lives and be submissive. Another BS diagnosis that existed to control women was lunacy, which essentially means that your mood is controlled by the moon. Now, I love astrology. I think my mood is controlled by the moon. But I don't think that makes us crazy. I think that makes us human. Another diagnosis is hysteria, which essentially means that your emotions are uncontrollable and excitable. But the history of hysteria was that it was actually something only used to diagnose women. And at one point, Freud actually convinced people that the reason women had hysteria is because they were so sad that they didn't have a penis, that all they had to do was marry one and then they'd be fine. I could seriously go on forever about this, so I'm going to sum it up as well as I can. When there is a group that people want to control, the best way to do that is to downplay them and make them look like they're crazy. And if we can make people feel like they're crazy and really take away their agency in that way, it's easier to control them. While many of these disorders have been removed from the DSM, some still stand, and some things that are there are really unethical. But I want to know your thoughts on this. What do you guys think about this topic? Let me know everything that's going on with you in the comments below.